A controversial game review, audience backlash that led to the video being unlisted, and a creator apology that might have made it worse.
Alright, Johnny, I'm sorry.
The review controversies of Cyberpunk may have happened a few years ago, but by God did a lot of the comments on the Payday 3 video sure mention one review in particular. So for many, it looks like the anger is still fresh. Let's get into it. I can't not pet him, right?
I'm here.
Okay, so we all know the story of Cyberpunk by now, especially you chads that watch Don't Pre-Order 2. Gameplay demos, record pre-order sales, and mankind's perfect specimen, Keanu Reeves blasted hype for Cyberpunk into
maximum overdrive.
I mean, come on, it's gonna have genital customization. You know, if you feel like you need that to feel confident. For years, plural, there was barely a corner of the internet where you could hide from the Cyberpunk hype. Game journalists, YouTubers, Reddit boards, the suspicious-looking outline of a jacket in our bedrooms at night. Cyberpunk 2077 was everywhere. One YouTuber in particular who was hype about it was YongYea. A lot of his content over the years had been purely just hype for the then unreleased game. He even had a cool little model of the cyber baddie from Cyberpunk's teaser, I assume that he got from E3 2018, hanging out in his video backgrounds.
Holy I just saw Cyberpunk. This game blew my mind to pieces. I had very high expectations coming into this, and somehow they managed to blow everything out of the water.
And he'll get no hate from me for that. By all means, if you're excited about a game, be excited about a game. What even is this hobby of ours if we don't get excited about anything anymore?
End of the road, and no hope of things getting better.
On the flip side of modern gaming, YongYea could also be counted on to call out shady practices and games that launched in broken states.
Do you consider them ethical?
So what we look at as surprise mechanics.
F off, EA. Alright? F right off.
Several of his video description merch links include the term surprise mechanics.
The latest debacle in the gaming industry that's causing somewhat of an uproar is, of course, Mass Effect Andromeda. There are certain standards that need to be met, and the shitty animations, the bugs, the general unpolished nature of the game just simply isn't acceptable. Seeing games like Mass Effect Andromeda is what makes me appreciate companies and studios like CD Red Project.
Grand auto theft.
You know, they delayed their games until it was absolutely ready.
Oh no! Oh no!
Well, he seemed pretty happy to receive the Fallout 76 pre-order bag from Bethesda as a gift anyway.
Yeah, it's just a bag where you can put stuff in it, as you do with bags. Pretty nice. I might use this for, you know, long trips and whatnot if I need to carry some stuff.
Then later decided to be angry about it once he realized people were upset about the bag's false advertising.
The thing that pisses me off most about Fallout 76 above all else is that this game represents just how little Bethesda seems to think of fans, gamers, and consumers as a whole. It's all very much like being told we would get a nice canvas bag, only for them to pull the rug under us and give us a crappy nylon bag instead.
Hey, I covered that one too.
Please watch my videos.
As Cyberpunk neared release, and as game reviews tend to go these days, YouTubers and game journalists alike were given access to play early. Ideally, this is so reviews will go out before the game launches to boost pre-order sales. I can't confirm if YongYea got his code for free or not, but like I said in the Payday video, are we sure getting a free game early doesn't give even an ounce of bias to a reviewer? Or going to exclusive events that are invite only? Think back to 2019 though, broken launches were still an anomaly and not the expectation. So publicly saying you were doing anything but worshipping at the altar of Cyberpunk at the time might have put you in the crosshairs of the game's massive fan base. Which is exactly what happened with GameSpot's early review of the game. Yeah, I know, Kingerd's defending a game journalist, it's the end times. Callie Page at GameSpot gave Cyberpunk a 7, citing a lot of its technical issues as factors in the score not being higher. And just look at their video for it. Dat ratio plus disabled comments equals everyone disliked that. Granted, she did admit there were several game features that she just skipped or wasn't interested in, which led to accusations that she hadn't properly played a game like Cyberpunk before reviewing it. She framed it as though this was her preference, but many Cyberpunk fans thought it could be a symptom of rushing to get a review out on time. Rushing through a game to get a review out on time is an issue that will come up again in this video. Meanwhile, the positive early reviews of Cyberpunk were to be expected, so people left them alone. Until people got to try it for themselves though, and then all that hype turned to hate. YongYea posted his initial review in 2 parts, one going 38 minutes and the other 46. His nearly hour-and-a-half review of Cyberpunk highlighted things like narrative depth, world building, and RPG mechanics, but one of the most important things he said is right at the beginning.
For this December 7th review embargo period, I am not allowed to show you my own gameplay footage. It feels like CD Projekt Red is trying to hide some of the buggy elements of the game that I would like to show you guys because I feel like it's important for you to know, but I'm not allowed to until the day that the game launches in certain regions.
He then talks about how Cyberpunk lived up to his expectations in many ways, gushing over its presentation, open world, and role progression.
The substance of the game blew me away and lived up to my hype. Decent variety of activities too, story-driven main and side quests never feeling generic, everything just feels really handcrafted. You know, it really did take my breath away in many regards. The most detailed, most gorgeous, most handcrafted feeling open world I've ever seen in a video game. It's bustling, it feels lived in, there's so many details on every corner. I really love what they did with the progression system of this game because there are just so many layers. One of the most memorable, one of the most incredible, jaw-dropping, unforgettable open world RPG experiences. This is a dream come true in many regards.
Near the end, YongYea spent about 7 minutes describing different bugs he'd seen in the game, but again, couldn't show, calling some of them immersion breaking.
You out of your mind? You crossed the line.
It is unfortunately unpolished in the state that I play the game in. It was disruptive enough where I would recommend people to wait until CD Projekt Red releases a patch that people can confirm works a lot better, makes the game a whole lot more polished. Until then, I might recommend that you hold off. But even with all that, I cannot help but feel as though this was one of the most memorable gaming experiences I've ever had. I've never played a game quite like this.
The second part of his review contained a lot of the same points, but this time he was able to actually show some of his own footage. At first, I'll admit, this review seemed pretty balanced to me. I wasn't really sure what all the outrage was about. Did my own commenters bamboozle me? You guys trying to make me look stupid? But then I remembered, oh yeah, for such a positive review, this is the launch of Cyberpunk we're talking about here.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
The game, whose bugs and issues at launch have been memed into oblivion and inspired a generation of anti-pre-orderers, myself included. But so that we don't rehash ground that we've already covered in the Don't Pre-Order series and stay more relevant to YongYea's review, after all, he didn't review the console versions that by far had the most issues and did mention the PC bugs plenty in his review videos. What arguably frustrated people more was the laundry list of features that had either been promised or mentioned in Cyberpunk's marketing just to be substantially lower quality than promoted or just completely absent. And who better to notice these missing features than the guy with 70 plus videos on the game before it had even come out yet? That's a lot, man. That's a lot. And the guy who wasn't scared to say "F off" to companies who take players' money for granted. The question his audience asked, why was YongYea so soft on Cyberpunk? Now hold up just a minute. Judging by some of the comments on the Payday 3 video and reactions from some of the creators featured in it, I must not have explained clearly the point I'm about to make in that video, so allow me to do it here. The most common defense I see for these creators is, but they didn't know, to which my response is, yeah, I know. I'm not saying they did. I do not think that any of the creators I've covered so far are sitting at their PCs going,
I can't wait to screw over my audience by lying to them.
There's a difference between malice, which is intentional, and negligence, which is not. If I were to put out videos assuming malice from every creator who promoted or positively reviewed a game with a bad launch, that would be bad faith from me. Good rule of thumb for life. Don't assume malice when you can assume negligence or just ignorance. If these words of wisdom end up saving your relationship, you can thank me in the comments. But as for Angry Joe, Big Fry TV, Actman, YongYea, I do not think that intent is there. However, I do think there's negligence, which I have called out, when a content creator who regularly covers broken launches encourages their audiences to buy a game early through a sponsorship or overlooks glaring issues in a review. They're not responsible for the bad launch, but I do think they're being irresponsible. If anyone should be familiar with the patterns of AAA launches today, it's people that criticize it for a living. It'd be like me having my Don't Pre-Order series, and then this video be sponsored by Redfall 2. Thank you, Redfall 2, for sponsoring this video. Please pre-order at the link in the description. Saying I don't think these creators are intending to mislead anyone isn't a backpedal, by the way. Regardless of intention, content creators still have the ethical responsibility to consider how they influence their audiences, especially if money is involved. I'm just clarifying that if there wasn't any intention to mislead, I think there's room for forgiveness and for the creator to learn from it. If there was intent to mislead, then by all means grab your metaphorical pitchforks. With these videos, the point is not, let's destroy their channels, stop watching them, go unsubscribe. No, the point is, if you like their content, great, keep watching them. But for the love of sweet liberty, don't buy a game early just because a content creator told you to. For people that keep asking me about the heated comments between Actman and I over the Payday video, we ended up speaking privately after that, heard each other out, and since then he has addressed the Payday situation from his perspective in video format, which is what his segments of that video called for at the time. It was a reaction that started negative but turned positive, I would say. I got no personal beef with Actman, Angry Joe, or YongYea, alright? I'm here to inform and entertain. I'm here to inform and entertain, not catfight for drama. As for Big Fry TV, though... Whatever, man. Keep deflecting your audience's criticisms if you want to. Which is so weird. I thought I sang his praises in that Payday video. Anywho, now that we have established that this is not personal and we're not assuming malice unless it is proven, let's see what put YongYea in the crosshairs of so many people after his Cyberpunk review. To understand why people are still talking about it today, let's compare it to SkillUp's review, another channel that faced similar criticism for being too positive about Cyberpunk. SkillUp shared a lot of the same positive talking points, but by far offered more criticism throughout his 52-minute review.
But it's a far weaker RPG. The majority of these options are simple stat bonuses that feel unsophisticated and uninteresting, with most of it being the familiar distract, stealth, or shoot you've probably seen before. The entire crafting economy is broken. The broader game economy is similarly dysfunctional, limiting your access to vehicles and upgrades unless you grind huge amounts of side content. The idea that one patch will fix every single issue that I alone found here in this playthrough is laughable. But if you have the restraint to wait, I do recommend doing so. Part of me wishes I was among the people who pick up the game for the first time a year from now.
Even though he explicitly recommended people wait to buy Cyberpunk, SkillUp still received comments saying things like, "I'm impressed this video hasn't been deleted," and "so this is where SkillUp got his name." Take it from someone who gets a lot of comments from people who only watch the first 10 seconds and then type something, this intro probably didn't help.
But the good news is that Cyberpunk 2077 absolutely delivers on high expectations. If you had high expectations for a truly incredible open world to explore and get lost in, Cyberpunk 2077 delivers. If you had high expectations for dazzling spectacle and set-piece moments, Cyberpunk 2077 delivers. If you had high expectations for a technical tour de force that raises the bar for what video games will look like in the future, Cyberpunk 2077 delivers. If you had expectations of a world... Alright, I get it! Cyberpunk 2077 delivers.
What SkillUp and YongYea's reviews had in common is that they were both accused of being too positive, both mentioned bugs that broke immersion, and both both applauded Cyberpunk's world building. Where they differ, however, and the main reason I completely agree with SkillUp's tweets about the situation a few months after the reviews came out, is that YongYea seemed to ignore or excuse the shortcomings of Cyberpunk way more than SkillUp did. Listening to YongYea speak about Cyberpunk while looking at its actual state made it more clear. YongYea committed the cardinal sin of not reviewing a game as it was. He reviewed the game he thought it would become. You know, after months of bug fixes and new content, and disregarding several broken promises made by CD Projekt Red. Which, if going soft on games was his MO, then his audience could learn to expect that. But I mean...
off, EA.
And people also accuse SkillUp of reviewing a version of Cyberpunk that didn't exist yet, but to be honest, if you get past the overly positive intro, there's so much criticism from him throughout the whole review that I think it ended up being pretty well-rounded. Fun fact, I set out to make this video about both of these channels based on my comments section and some online debates, but after watching SkillUp's review all the way through and seeing just how mixed it really was, SkillUp got demoted from subject to reference. Yes, I analyzed probably 5 hours worth of these guys' videos while making this. It's why this one took me longer than usual. Please give it a like, I'm tired. To hammer home the difference between these two channels just a little bit more, on December 7th, 2 days before launch, SkillUp was tweeting about how he refused to comply with CD Projekt Red's footage embargo, calling trailer-only footage reviews nothing more than marketing material, raising red flags about the lack of console review copies, and outright stating that the game is unfinished and only a reviewer's own footage could accurately show that. What did YongYea say on that same day?
The most detailed, most gorgeous, most handcrafted, most memorable, most incredible, jaw-dropping.
If you follow the same reviewer for a while, you start to learn their biases, but YongYea's previous reviews had people thinking he had a good amount of objectivity to him. It probably also didn't help that Krobcat. Sorry if I got it wrong, I'm saying Krobcat. It probably also didn't help that Krobcat's viral video about Cyberpunk post-launch had YongYea's face plastered not once, but twice in its first few minutes. That video is great if you want to check it out. Just whip out a couple oars and paddle your way through all the reaction streamers first. Is that too much shade? In response to the backlash, YongYea unlisted both parts of his Cyberpunk review. This means they're no longer floating around the almighty yet mysterious YouTube algorithm. They're not publicly visible on the homepage of his channel, but they could still be accessed via a direct link. Links which are in the description if you want to see the whole thing for yourself. In addition to unlisting the reviews, he also posted a video telling us that he unlisted them.
This is a review where I feel I certainly didn't do my due diligence. It's a review from someone who rushed through the campaign and the overall experience instead of taking his time. It's a review from someone who put way too much trust in CD Projekt Red, and it's a review from someone who got way too caught up in the hype.
If you can't do the time, don't do the crime.
I certainly went way too easy on this game in a way that I wouldn't have with other games or companies, and the review just shouldn't be up. The police system was among the things that I didn't spotlight enough. I also should have emphasized a lot more the lackluster simulation elements like the brain-dead crowd AI. I didn't spend enough time testing out exactly how multiple endings worked, how drastic of an effect life paths actually had, which is not a whole lot. Just so many things I could have talked about in more detail and more accurately if I had not rushed my review, if I hadn't pulled my own version of CD Projekt with the release of my review.
Okay, so he's putting away his takes that he felt weren't the best representation of the game, and he's putting out there the take where he admits his mistakes and apologizes. Well, that's good, right? Well, yes, it is. And good on him for being so quick. It only took him 6 months after the original reviews?
Looks like just in the nick of time.
A couple minutes ago wouldn't have been so bad either.
What are you gonna do?
Only took 6 months after the ad revenue went dry. Takes a big man to apologize 6 months after the fact and then monetize the apology video as well. That's a long explanation for I was simping instead of warning everybody else. First off, the unlisting of the original reviews, probably a good idea in my opinion, but 6 months later? Brother, at that point the damage is already done. If people were gonna make a purchasing decision based on YongYea's review, which several people said they did, they'd already spent their money. They don't call them influencers for nothing. So if anything, to me, waiting 6 months really does look like ad revenue probably wasn't going crazy at that time. It wasn't gonna break the old piggy bank for him to take the video down. There's not much of a sacrifice there. And I don't know his intent, only he does, but that's what it looks like to me. Plus, 6 months would be plenty of time to gauge the public reaction to the game to see if your stance lines up with the popular opinion, aka checking to see if your takes are hot or cold. And coming from me, a guy who will staunchly defend Alan Wake 2 from being called a walking simulator. Everybody hold this. Hellblade. Reviewers' takes are supposed to be their takes, no matter what their comments say. People aren't stupid, they can pick up when a YouTuber is just going with the popular opinion, and YongYea outright changing his stance on Cyberpunk with that much intensity.
The narrative is bolstered by the incredible presentation of this title, and I still find aspects of the game's presentation impressive, though others obviously not so much. And you layer that on top of combat that feels really good, on top of really varied quests with compelling stories, on top of the open world, just how lived in and lifelike everything looks, the details in one of the most stellar video game experiences, and a truly marvelous technical and creative achievement. I still think Night City itself does look gorgeous, even though as a simulation, it obviously falls woefully short.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Seems a little bandwagony. And opinions can change, I'm not arguing that, but if YongYea wanted his change of opinion and apology to his audience to feel sincere, why the heck did he monetize the apology? I get it, content's content, and for people who rely on YouTube income to live, it's probably necessary for them to have everything monetized. But putting ad revenue on a video like this sort of reinforces the notion that a YouTuber is happy to push their audience any which way so long as they make money off of it. Which YouTube is a business for monetized creators, so if that's a good thing for their channel, that's for them to decide. But it's something for us to be aware of as audience members. Hey, did you know a lot of the media we consume is intended to influence our purchasing decisions? Mind-blowing, isn't it? But seriously, using an apology video to address audience concerns is fine. It's great, even. But monetizing that apology just chucks an ethical monkey wrench into the whole situation that doesn't need to be there. A lot of YongYea's apology mentions how he fell for CD Projekt Red's marketing hype, and that the company had set up content creators for failure by showcasing game footage to them that just wasn't accurate.
And on top of that, I was invited among various media outlets to check out a behind closed doors presentation, and while we did come to learn that the demo turned out to be completely fake, the game at the time seemed very real because of the way they presented it.
And restricting what they could show in their videos.
From the outset, there were already a bunch of red flags.
You don't say!
The fact that they were only handing out PC copies, turned out they were not handing console copies out at all. Then there's the fact that CD Projekt didn't allow me to show my own gameplay until December 9th. CD Projekt did promise to reviewers that they would get weeks to play Cyberpunk 2077, but instead, we got just 1 week.
Assuming that's true, I think YongYea makes a good point. Hurry up, player game, quick, you want to get your review out on time, don't ya? If a company does have too harsh of restrictions on the review process, absolutely that can end up compromising the review. But even so, I would think that's the responsibility of the creator to not let that impact the integrity of the review or how thorough it is. I'm willing to bet losing your audience's trust has way worse long-term consequences than getting a review out a couple days after everyone else.
April Fools. Jerk.
As to who's more at fault, CD Projekt Red or YongYea, or both, every video I've mentioned is linked in the description, so feel free to check those out to draw your own conclusions. But either way, after looking at this situation, I think it is safe to say, content can become corrupted if the balance of self-bias, honesty, meeting expectations, and timeliness goes wrong.
Earthquake test!
No single creator's word is gospel, especially not mine. Yeah, I suck, don't listen to me.
My goal isn't to flip-flop and just follow what the audience is saying. My goal is to, try to rectify coverage when it needs to be rectified. I'll remember what happened with Cyberpunk. I will do my best to make sure something like that doesn't happen again.
So I'll ask you, who do you think is to blame for early Cyberpunk reviews not matching the general reception upon its release? Do you think YongYea handled it well? Thank you channel members for voting on the topic of today's video. Check out the second channel for horror games, lore dives, and just other shenanigans. As always, thanks for watching. Kingerd out.